Okay.
Exactly.
95%.
I hate that things back.
Oh, yes, I am.
Stop it to me. Well, I'm just.
I've done my time.
That verification that you signed, I need that original.
Still working.
I know exactly where it is.
Payroll tax.
It's in my recycling.
That's.
They'll review every call, right?
I don't have a problem with that.
Step two.
The end. Okay. Well, one second, maybe that means we have, Zoom. Good evening. This is the meeting of the Board of Commissioners for the town of Pittsburgh for Monday, January the 9th of the new year 2023. As is our custom, we'll begin our meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. Commissioner Farrell, would you lead us in the pledge?
Certainly. Would everyone rise for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag
In the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You have the agenda before you, and I will accept a motion to be either to approve the agenda as it stands or a motion to modify the agenda.
Make a motion to approve. Everyone's good with consent?
Motion by
I do have, I would like to pull the number 5 on the consent. If we can do that at this time.
all right. Will you modify your motion to approve?
Yes,
Commissioner?
modify.
All right. Motion made by Commissioner Shipp. Seconded by. Second by Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Motion carries. We have this evening a proclamation, since the board does not meet next week. A proclamation celebrating and honoring the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I will read that at this time. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. changed our nation forever through his leadership, service, and clarity of vision. And whereas in the brief time that Dr. King walked upon this earth, he devoted his life to strengthening the content of the American character and called on our nation to live up to its founding principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all its citizens. And whereas through his determined spirit and resolve, Dr. King helped lift souls and lead one of the greatest movements for equality and freedom in history. And whereas the town of Pittsboro wishes to honor the lasting legacy of this great American, remember the ideals for which he fought, and recommit ourselves to ensuring that our country's promise extends to all Americans across the great land. And whereas we observe Dr. King's birthday as we observe his birthday, the town of Pittsboro encourages all Americans to celebrate his memory by performing acts of kindness through service to others. Now, therefore, I, Cindy Perry, Mayor of Pittsboro, encourage all citizens of the town of Pittsboro to honor Dr. King by living out his teachings as we continue to work for the day when dignity and humanity of every person is respected. Adopted this the 9th day of January, 2023, and I will sign it as mayor. This is a proclamation and not a resolution by the board, so we need not have a vote on this document. So that brings us then to citizens matters. The first is our manager update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Board. Just a couple quick updates. One of them is we hired a recreation coordinator, and that person's going to start on February 20th. We're in the process of doing some final interviews for park superintendent. We made an offer out to a planner one, and we've begun advertising for an accounting specialist. So we're moving along with the much needed hires. In February, we're going to move into the new offices at the Main Street Station. Staff has looked over it. Everybody's very excited about that, and we think it's going to be much more conducive to really a better, more teamwork environment. We want to remind everybody about the Western Intake Partnership meeting tomorrow at 5:30 at the library. I appreciate Commissioner Farrell's recommendations. I talked to the mayor about this before the meeting. We did want to pull item 5 for a couple reasons. One of them is want to check with some of our close-in neighbors about what they do about on-call pay to see if we can be consistent with them. I think about Sanford is a good example. And second, kind of related issue to that is once we settle on a on-call callback policy, to go out and talk to the folks being impacted by that so that they can understand what we're proposing to do. And then the final thing is Commissioner Shipp and Kent and Heather and I met with LGC today, Local Government Commission. And as you know, we have a bid out there for our force main. It's about a $55 million bid. We have somewhere around $38 million, $37 million in well, we really actually got $26 million in a loan, and then we're optimistic about a $10 million grant. Anyways, it's got many moving parts, and I thought we had a very positive discussion with LGC. They understood kind of this future growth. Currently, we have 21 customers, but you know what's going on in our community with Chatham Park is real, and so we feel good that we're going to be able to get to an end solution to what we're trying to do with the force main and the public work. So with that, I could answer any questions. That's manager's update.
Thank you. Any questions for Hazen Project? As far as my update and comments, first of all, I would like to take a point of personal privilege to welcome my niece from Seattle, Washington, to the audience. I think when you come to a town meeting 3,000 miles away, you need to be at least congratulated for being that interested and engaged. We certainly enjoyed the holidays here, and when we got sort of back into commission, I and Commissioner Shipp had the pleasure of seeing the new Green Beagle Pet Resort into existence. We didn't cut the ribbon exactly, but we we certainly enjoyed this new facility that lies just on the outside of town on the east, but it's not actually in the town limits. So, I'd also like to point out, a few other things besides the Western Wake Partnership intake, meeting tomorrow. On Wednesday, the board will meet again, this time in closed session to interview a candidate for interim town manager. Hazen Blodgett is not able to serve past the end of January with us, and therefore we will be needing additional coverage between then and the hire of a permanent town manager. Also, I'd call your attention to an event that's going to be here in the Agriculture Conference Center on February the 3rd, and that is an all-day seminar with respect to Black entrepreneurism, and invites folks that are interested in attending. They can certainly take a look at the information on the website for this group. So that's all I have. Mayor Pro Tem Baldwin.
No, I don't have anything. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Bonitz.
Yes, thank you. So in lieu of a report from the County Climate Change Advisory Committee, I just wanted to bring my own very brief report. I hope that we all in Pittsburgh got through the cold spell around Christmas holidays safely and soundly, and nobody suffered terrible property losses. I didn't hear of any loss of life. But this is a reminder, kind of post-mortem after this event, that climate change is causing more extreme weather. And it's going to be unpredictable. And we're going to be facing more historic storms, not fewer. And the lesson learned from this experience with the blackouts, the rolling blackouts that Duke implemented, is that gas and coal-fired electricity aren't always dependable in extreme weather. In contrast, the renewable energy on our grid with battery storage was more reliable. In fact, it was completely reliable. And I think it's a fact worth noting. Further, the facts are that there were several natural gas and 2 coal-fired power plants that were forced into reduced generating capacity because of technical vulnerabilities from the cold and the wind chill. And with great respect to the people who worked so hard to keep the lights on, to their credit, we have never in the history of electrification in North Carolina had such a deep and prolonged cold spell, 5 days, when other regions, North and South Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, were unable to send electricity to help us out. That was the distinct difference between this event and other events, is number one, how prolonged the event was. Duke, in all of their forecasts, had never contemplated longer than a 24-hour period of that intensive cold. And second, this was not just our region. It was throughout the entire eastern and Midwest of the United States. So there was no one to come rescue us. We had to do it ourselves. And that's why they had to do the rolling blackouts to keep the grid running. And I respect their decision. It was unfortunate. It was uncomfortable. We lived through it. The lesson learned that they've made very clear is that in future they will have better notification. And they made that clear to the Utilities Commission, the regulatory body that oversees the utilities. And I hope that they've also learned that the solar and storage, battery storage, our resources worth giving greater consideration for their ability to give us resilience. So that was it. I just wanted to give some facts because of my privileged work in this area. And if any questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonitz. Commissioner Farrell.
I attended the PBA meeting in December. Greg Lewis had a nice breakfast for everyone. The next meeting, it was a short one, just more or less into Christmas spirit. The next meeting, I believe, will be this coming Wednesday, Wednesday morning. I should be there. Other than that, the only other thing, Hazen, thank you about the number 5 item. That was the only question I had. I made comments here that I was concerned what Sanford, Siler City, and Chatham County, what their policy was. And you know, before we just go off and make a policy like this, since we're in phase 2 with Sanford, I just felt like that we needed to know where they were. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Shipp.
Sure. On December 21st, we had the EDC meeting. One update from there is that on January 18th, Wolfspeed is going to do a supplier day here at the Ag Center. So you can RSVP for that, and they're going to do a series of 4 different meetings throughout the day to talk about the types of things they need for the Wolfspeed project and how you can become a supplier for that project. Our next meeting is January 18th for that. We had a AHAC meeting on January 5th, but I was not able to attend. I understand there's some additional money out there, and it'll be I think there'll be a second round of applications for that affordable housing money. And then this Thursday, I'm going to start course, the local elected leaders academy at UNC School of Government. That's a 4-month, 2-day-a-month course. So start on that. And then just a quick update, want to say the town hall renovations look really good. You know, the new offices there, and conversion of the boardroom into offices. It's really nice and good space for our staff. So
Thank you. Commissioner Vose.
Happy New Year. I don't have anything to add.
All right, thank you. We're next then at public comment. Are there any persons signed up for a public comment? Is there anyone that didn't have the opportunity to sign up that would like to speak for 3 minutes on a matter of concern? Hearing none, then we'll proceed to the consent agenda. As you know, items 1 through 7, 1 through 6 are proposed according to the agenda, with the removal of item number 5 to be discussed at the next meeting or whenever it comes back to the board. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Farrell,
Seconded.
seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We have no public hearings tonight, but we have old business. First of all is the matter of the Board of Adjustment. We still have vacancies on that board, and due to the holidays, I have not been able to contact anyone further, but Commissioner Vose had given me a name that will be incorporated into that. Did any other commissioners have recommendations for that board? We have 1 permanent member that we need, and then an ETJ alternate and an in-town alternate. We have a pending matter before the Board of Adjustment and need to complete that that committee, that board.
Mayor, can I interrupt real quick?
Yes.
It's actually 2 regular members. So an in-town regular member and an ETJ regular member that needs to be appointed.
Okay. Could you review for the board then who we have that is committed?
Yes. Let me see. So, am I muted? Oops. Sorry, I'm on my phone. Okay. Walter Harris and Sarah Carr are both proposed for in-town members. And then Ray Bland is an ETJ regular member. And then one of the alternate members is Shannon Plummer, who's in the ETJ.
I believe the intention was to move Shannon over to the ETJ so that regular member, move him off the alternate and onto the regular member, but we would still need would we still need alternates from both the ETJ and in town?
Alternates are helpful, but not necessarily a requirement. It's just so that, you know, if we have a case and not all of the regular members are present, then we have alternates that are hopefully able to show up. So not necessarily a requirement, but helpful to have.
If you wish to move Mr. Plummer from the alternate to the regular category, you need a motion.
Then we could go forward.
But, you know, yes, you still have other vacancies.
Okay, there are a total of how many on the board?
5 regular.
5 regular members. So we need one more in town.
I believe that's correct, isn't it? One
Yes,
more in town.
All right.
yes.
Okay. Well, let us then, I would propose that Shannon Plummer come over from the status of alternate into a permanent member of the board from the ETJ. Could somebody make that motion? Thank you. And is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And is there a recommendation from anyone on the board regarding the in-town permanent member of the board of adjustment?
Mayor, are the applications on the website or have we got applications?
Did we advertise for this position and get applications as in the usual procedure for getting committees or boards?
No, I have not received any applications. I've reached out to all of the names that you've given me to that are appointed to the board. And I've had a lot of discussion with Paul about this as well. So an application isn't required, but it's very helpful to have. And I haven't heard from any of the members as of yet. So just on a staff side and a records retention, it would be helpful to have them. Like I said, I've been having trouble getting in contact with them as it is.
The vacancies have been posted on the town website, but I think that's it.
Okay.
Okay. So if the town website has had the notice and we have not received anybody, that would be up to us to trap some, shall we say. Thoughts, keeping in mind issues of diversity. Now, I believe that your recommendation, Mr. Vose, was for a woman whose name escapes me right now.
I don't know that she's responding.
Oh, that she may not be responding. Okay.
That's what it
She has declined.
Oh, she has declined. Okay, thank you. I did not know that. All right. Well, we have our job before us, so let us say that before the next meeting that we would recruit actively for both an in-town person and 2 alternates, 1 in-town and 1 ETJ. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And let me know if I can help in any way as well.
Thank you. All right. Under old business, we have the regional water plant expansion presentation. And Kent Jackson, would you come to the podium and introduce the item as well as our visitor this evening?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. So we are working with City of Sanford on a number of projects, initiatives. You mentioned earlier about the merger. We're also working with them on a regional water treatment expansion project that involves Pittsburgh, of course, City of Sanford, Holly Springs, and Fuquay-Varina. So there are some There's some important decisions coming up for the board and for the town in the near future this year. And so we thought it was timely to ask Sanford to give the board an overview and update on the water treatment plant expansion project. So tonight we have Vic Czar and Paul Weeks from the city of Sanford. And I think Vic will give you an update on the project and answer questions you might have. So Vic.
Welcome, Mr. Czar.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Paul is here. Paul is the Director of Utilities and Engineering, and I'm the Public Works Director. Basically, he's here to keep me straight. If I start straying too far from what I'm supposed to be telling you, he's going to jump up over there. So don't get excited. It's fine. It's on purpose. So yeah, we're here to talk about the treatment plant expansion project that does involve many different local governments. And we'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. Very informal. If there's something you want us to just interrupt as you see fit to discuss it. We've got 4 general topics that we want to talk about. Background, basically to tell you how we got here from where we were, scope of the project itself, what it means, schedule on moving forward, and then the cost and how we propose that's distributed. Pre-2018, the city of Sanford knew that they needed to consider a water plant expansion. Our plant currently is permitted for 12 million gallons a day, and we were having max days over 10, somewhere around 2015, somewhere in there. In the water business, you work on your max day, not your average day like you do in the wastewater business. So we knew that it was coming. Growth is coming for us. Growth is coming for you. It's recognized. It's not going to stop. We need to do something on our side to prepare us for that. So we started having internal conversations about what that meant. Our water plant is built in 6 million gallon a day modules. So that meant we either had to add on 6 MGD, 12 MGD, or 18 MGD. We knew and we know that there's economies of scale in both the capital as well as the operation of a facility. We knew that some other local governments in the region were concerned about their water quantity. So we started trying to solicit partners to see if others were interested in participating in our plant expansion. And like Kent said, Holly Springs and Fuquay Varina are interested, and they are pursuing a partnership with the city of Sanford. Pittsboro is interested, and we're pursuing that as well. Just to give an example of how it works for us, and I think how it would work for others as well. When we started looking at a plant expansion to go to 6 million gallons a day, our estimated cost was in excess of $90 million. As you'll see, when we get through this, our cost is going to be down around the 50 million, give or take. I don't know exactly what the number is. We'll see it when we get there, per 5 MGD. It's significant. Okay. It's real money savings when you can start having partners along for the ride. We're talking about expanding our water plant from 12 million gallons a day to 30 million gallons a day. If we could somehow find somebody for that water between 30 and 36 million gallons a day, everybody's unit cost would come down even more. But it's more than we wanted to bite off at this time. We didn't think it was reasonable. We think these estimates, this size, gives us a reasonable expectation that the plant will last for 20 years. So that's where we ended up with this. In September of 2020, we started the preliminary engineering report. You can imagine with Sanford, Holly Springs, Fuquay, and Pittsboro, there's a lot of discussion about long-term operation and maintenance and what this looks like. And we've started those conversations in 21. An interlocal agreement between all the parties. We've had several meetings. I think we're getting close to that being a document that we're going to move forward to the elected officials and see if they have any comments on it. Our plan is to move that along early in the spring to meet the schedule that you'll see later. January of 2022, we started the design. So that was a big day for us. We knew it was going to take roughly a year or so to design it and probably 3 years to construct it after that. Capacity will be brought on in phases through the project. We don't have to get all the way to the end for the entire capacity to be used. There'll be intermediate milestones where people can have more water as they need it. The way it's contemplated right this minute, there's 4 components to the plant expansion. You can read them there, but it's conventional treatment, the granular activated carbon, which y'all are familiar with. Residuals management, when you make water, you take stuff out of the raw water, so you have to do something with whatever's left. And raw water infrastructure, new raw water pumping station, and some improvements to the intake itself. We are also providing space for ultraviolet and advanced oxidation in anticipation of potential rules coming forward. 1,4-dioxane was a pollutant of concern at one point. We've done some raw water testing. 98 or 99% of the time, our concentration is below detection. And when we do detect it, it's very low. But we do understand that that could be a coming function that we need to provide to meet all the requirements. So we're allowing for that in this design. On the next page and up here on the screen, roughly this is what I guess it's a computer rendering. In the old days, you'd see a colored drawing, but now it's a computer rendering. On the right-hand side, you see what the plant facility will look like. On the left-hand side, you see somewhat of a 3D model and layout of what we expect this to be. We're quite far along in the design, so will be what it looks like. The pictures on the left somewhat concentrate on the GAC facility. It is significant. It's designed for the total plant capacity of 30 MGD. So we were just trying to give people a visual of what to expect. I know that GAC is an important thing for everybody. You spent a significant amount of money at your own water treatment facility to install one and deal with some of this PFAS and PFOA that everybody has to deal with. It's not unique to you. It's not unique to us. As you can see on the sheet, it will be designed for the entire 30 billion gallon a day plant. The idea there is not only to remove the PFAS and PFOA because it is the preferred method through EPA to address the concern, but other more common conventional pollutants, organics, and those kinds of things. So it will improve water quality more than one way. It will help remove the PFAS and the PFOA, as well as some of the organics that can lead to other issues with your water quality in terms of trihalomethanes or disinfection byproducts or those kinds of things. So we get a lot of use and a lot of real good function out of that granular activated carbon facility. In terms of schedule, it's there on the next page. We started the PER in 2020. We completed it in 21. The design started in early 22. We are currently on this schedule. We met the 90% design in January of 23. February 23, we think we'll meet the design complete, as you see up here. Now we're starting to enter into some of this schedule that we're not in control of. We have to submit to the state for their review and approval. And like a lot of people these days, I think they're struggling for people. We hope that we'll get it back in time to bid it in April. Maybe we will, maybe we won't, but we've met our part of this schedule. We'll see what happens. The other thing that's not on this schedule is we're of the belief that there is going to be some grant money available for advanced treatment and removal of some emerging contaminants. There was supposed to be some guidance on some grant funding at the end of last year that was to come out. We haven't seen it yet. We do believe it will come out. We will wait to see what that looks like unless that time becomes protracted. We're balancing the amount of grant money we could receive with rising construction price as well as rising interest rates. At some point, it won't make sense to keep waiting. We'll just have to see how that goes. Hopefully the information comes out sooner rather than later and we can apply and move along. If we do start in June, it is anticipated to be roughly a 3-year construction project, so it will be done in 26. The only thing that's not shown on that schedule up there is the interlocal agreement. It is a significant component to the schedule. Our goal is to take an interlocal agreement that has been crafted, worked on, bought into by the staff of all party local governments. And we will take it to the elected officials for their input or whatever input they'd like to have so that we can get it approved, hopefully in March. And that will allow for the bidding in April. Again, that may move a little bit based on the review from the state as well as the potential for grant funding for GAC facility. Okay, here's where it gets exciting. We have an engineer's estimate at 60% design, okay? Total construction cost is anticipated to be $237.3 million as of today. We should be getting an updated estimate on that at the 90% within the next month. We got the plans prior to having an estimate. It just takes them a while to work through that. The snapshot or screenshot you see in the lower right-hand corner of the screen there is a screen from a Power BI presentation model that we've constructed with our engineer, which is Hazen and Sawyer. We can move different parameters and whatnot, but the costs there in I guess it'd be about the center of the page is what we anticipate based on that estimate, everybody's share to be. Next slide, please. And you may wonder how you get there. Well, there's two parts to it. We need to look at the GAC facility separate from the remainder of the construction because we have an existing 12 million gallon a day plant and the construction of the GAC for that portion of the facility should be our costs. Then everything above that is split based on the percentage of your volume over the total volume. So roughly we pick up 21, when I say we, City of Sanford picks up about $22 million of the $38.6 million that's anticipated for the GAC facility. And then the rest is divided amongst the partners based on a percentage. So I think the table is a little easier to read than the graphic that we showed you on the other. But that's where we are right now based on the estimates that we have. So you can see everybody's anticipated cost share on that screen. And we just wanted to give you a quick overview of where we are right now. We're really interested in answering any questions you may have on this project or moving forward. If you have any, we'd be glad. It's the first time we've been here to discuss this. So I know it's a lot to digest. So we've been working on it for years. So
Thank you. The board's questions for Vic Sar.
Vic, as much as it's in your world or mine, but can you talk a little bit about if we agree to that interlocal agreement in March, when is the money due essentially? When does the bill come?
we need the money before we can award bids. So I think on the schedule it's shown in April. So somewhere in that general time frame. Now, when we receive bids, I don't, how it works in Sanford. When we receive bids, it takes a while to go through them. Hopefully it's within the estimate. You've experienced what can happen, and we have to figure out how all this moves forward. The schedule may be optimistic, but it's something we have to meet. We need water. So we're going to move along as quickly as we can after that.
Okay, thank you. And then we've for our GAC project, we chose, essentially a maintenance point of 90%. So when the removal gets to 90%, we regenerate the GAC. Have you guys made that determination yet?
We're in the process of that, it depends on a lot of factors. Okay. It depends on the concentration coming in as to the percent removal you need to achieve to reach a goal of what's coming out. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you have, I'll just make up numbers. If you have concentrations coming in of 50, you need to be more efficient removing it than if we have concentrations coming in at 5. Right. So for lack of any real guidance from a regulatory perspective at this point, I believe our goal would be to regenerate or replace at the time we think the rule would be. And I'm not really prepared to say what that is at this moment, but right, it's a reason, because you got to balance the cost, because we're anticipating, we ran some numbers. If there was, I think it was 18 million gallons a day running through the plant, we think it's going to be about $1.8 million a year annually to either regenerate or replace the GAC material. It's not an inexpensive thing. You need to be cognizant of your fiduciary responsibility as well as to deliver the quality of the water that you need to deliver. So we haven't really decided yet exactly what that would be, but I think that's the parameters that we're going to use to make a decision. We'll measure what's coming in and what's coming out and try to match what we believe the regulatory point will be until such time as the regulations state what it will be. Because we're of firm belief when we first put it in, your removal rate's going to be really high. It's just a question of how quick are you willing to replace it to keep it that high? And there's a lot of aspects to it.
Okay, thank you.
Vic, one question, with Pittsburgh being a distressed municipality, I believe we spoke about that with Freeze and Nichols. Will that help Sanford in any way, in any time of type of grant approvals? That Sanford assisted Pittsburgh with our issues.
Right.
And hope it's going to help us.
That carry off.
Right. The distressed community part doesn't really do anything for us. Okay. The fact that we're partners does a lot for us because it helps us with the SRF application and all those kinds of things. You get extra points for those kinds of things. Where it does help, and I would say this is a help to Sanford, is I think you have applied for a $30 million grant for a water line, going from the Sanford water plant to Pittsburgh. And yeah, that would help. If you use water, our cost per gallon goes down. So it won't be direct in the sense that, we can apply for X million dollar worth of grant, but yes, there's benefit from the fact that if you get the 30 million, then you can put your line in. Yeah.
And I guess that brought up a good point too for our board here. The $37 million is to construct the plant and give us water in Sanford. So we still have additional cost to construct a line, actually from the VinFast site to Pittsburgh. On top of that, so the state has paid, I think the state has paid for a line from Sanford to the VinFast site, so that's of a benefit to us also. But we do have cost in addition to this plant cost to get the water from the VinFast site back up to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, on that, we did receive some state funding to provide water and wastewater to the VinFast site. There's 2 phases to VinFast, and actually the first phase will get a little further along than that because we have to tie into a Chatham County line to serve the phase 1. So yes, you get some benefit. It was the size of that line will be such that you can get your water through that line. So yes, there's some help there.
Other questions for the board?
I would just say if you have any, just let us know. We'll be glad to talk you through it. I think it's we're very interested in having partners. I've told you the benefit to us. We know it. The council understands regionalism. We've got several partners on several different things. They're very interested. And I think if you talk to Chatham County, they'll find we're a pretty good partner. We've been dealing with them in the utilities for quite some time. I think they're satisfied. They never say they're not. But you know, it's somebody close to home that you probably know and trust that could, you know, give you some information on how we deal. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
right.
Very much. All right. The next order of business is under new business. Teresa Thompson, are you going to speak to us about a special event downtown upcoming?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the board. The
Teresa, can you lean into the mic just a little bit more?
yes,
Your voice is soft. I can't hear you well.
okay. The Downtown Advisory Board approved a new event to take place on February the 4th. The purpose of the event is to attract shoppers downtown in the first quarter, which can be kind of a more difficult period for businesses after the holidays are over. The event's a partnership with the Downtown Advisory Board and Circle City Merchants. The event's called Sip and Stroll, and there's a committee that was created. They have met 3 times now to discuss the event. The promotions committee was, they originally came up with the idea, even though the event's next month, they came up with the idea at their very first official promotions committee meeting. So they jumped on it as quickly as possible. So it's just timing wise that we're trying to have this planned for the February 4th event, which we think that everything's in order for it to move forward. We don't have a line item for special events. And we also don't have a system, a process in place to accept sponsorships for events, which we are working on. We're hoping to button that up in the next month or so. So we're requesting for the board to allow $700 of the board's special events line item to go towards this event specifically for 2 bands to play and face painting. We thought it best to pay for a face painter so that could be a free activity offered at the event versus parents having to, you know, pay for each child. There's also going to be live music, a free crafts table for children, a food truck, several vendors. We're going to be matching local breweries up with different shops downtown. And the Red Moose Brewing Company is also going to have different events going or activities going on during the event. We're also thinking of having a game, Find the Heart game, where people find different hearts located throughout downtown, take a picture with it, and they tag downtown Pittsboro. There's a prize for them as well. So lots of activities planned, and we anticipate it being a smaller event, but to grow each year, hoping for, you know, a nice mix of families, couples, friends, and promoting it as a Valentine's Day shopping event. So the recommendation is to approve the request for $700. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
You've heard the request. Are there questions for Teresa Thompson, or is there a motion on the request?
I have just one comment on this. I just wonder where we're going with this paying for 2 things on private property. Is this something the board wants? I mean, I'm sure something come up later on the garden. Hey, you know, I have a band down here at my place. I'm gonna put behind the board there because I'm a little concerned about paying for bands at private property. Hazen might have a better idea on how to.
I think it's an interesting point. I think at the same time, we're trying to build vibrancy downtown. You know, the intention is not to give a business a leg up. Have you heard any complaints?
No, sir. It would be the SoCo patio is what Commissioner Farrell is referring to. And the intent of that was to be used for smaller events as well. That would benefit the entire downtown, not just the business owners at that one location. The intent is to have other activities throughout the rest of downtown to have people walk, through the whole downtown as well, not just stay at the patio.
And that event will be essentially open to the public, won't it?
Yes, sir.
So it's not in any way an exclusive affair.
No, sir. We'll start advertising for it tomorrow. We wanted to wait for this to be approved first. So we will be marketing it as a public event.
There would be some alcohol though, and that would be sold from those adjacent businesses.
So there would just be taste testings at local businesses. Each brewer has to have an off-premise permit with the ABC Commission, but there will be a few beer vendors on the patio because that is private property. And we don't have a social district yet or anything like that downtown that would allow people to purchase and consume alcohol on public property.
So they won't be able to leave the premises with their beverage.
Correct.
And there'll also presumably be some control of flow of people to and fro based on their identification and age of.
Yes, sir. Each brewery is required to make sure that they serve, 21 and up.
Yeah, so. Commissioner Farrell, given all of that additional information, do you still have the concerns about it being on private property?
Yes, sir. I do. I'm just gonna, how's this gonna be liability to the town? Private property, is it gonna be SoCo? I know they have named that before, I'm assuming you're talking about the SoCo at the courthouse circle, not below the mall.
It's
not below the mall, correct?
correct.
Yeah, I think right now, like we've seen some of these events come to us as like one-off events essentially for approval. So I think it would be good to have a special event policy. And I know we're kind of navigating the interim right now. I'm having an issue with this event. I think it's good. But I think it will be good for us to get to a policy and a budget for the downtown committee to approve these, based on guidelines without needing to come to us for each one, although we'd like to hear about them and like that they're happening, but make the process more clear for everybody about how we do events downtown to include guidelines about liability and, how alcohol is handled, all those things like we do with our special event permit now, and then the additional approval on this, but I think it's acceptable. And I think especially in this case, that business is not even open yet at SoCo, that brewery. So maybe that's a little different for promoting one over the other, but and I would say in the future too, if there's a need for a type of social district for an event or, some of that capability, that's something we've done for previous events also and authorized.
Yes, sir. I would say that the SoCo patio, even though it is private property, it's for the public to enjoy. And it's also, like I said, bringing people downtown, that it benefits all the businesses. We do have events at the Page Park property as well, but with that being public property, we wanted to have the beer sales and everything kind of centrally located at the patio event. So for this event, we're not using the Page Park, but that's another location that we can use in the future.
And I think it's important too that this event has been developed, and worked through our downtown advisory board committee. So whoever idea it was, bringing ideas to that committee that we've created, and utilizing their feedback for what we do downtown.
Yes, it's just to bring more people downtown during a time where sales are a little harder, with being the first quarter of the year, with the holidays being over. So that's the reason why there was such an emphasis on trying to make it work, even though it was a quicker turnaround.
Is there maybe a different $500 line item that we could sponsor that would alleviate Commissioner Farrell's concerns?
Utilizing a different line item? Is that what you're?
Is there a
asking?
different $500 that we could, is there something different that we could pay for that same amount of money? That's not bans on private property.
To go, you're asking if it can go towards a different?
Yes.
For this event, we planned the bands and the face painting to be the major parts that would cost more money. In the future, we would be engaging with different businesses and trying to accept sponsorships for these types of events as well. So, hopefully we wouldn't have to come and ask for these kinds of approvals. But at this time, we don't have that in place.
Further questions for Teresa Thompson?
I'll just say, I'm not against it, but no means on it. But, I'm just concerned about private property.
Yeah,
All for it. Anything downtown, it's gonna help out.
I think good point. And I think that's how a policy will help everyone be clear about what the downtown advisory board wants downtown and how we engage with them. But I think this is good in the meantime.
and we are working on completely overhauling the special events process. So that we've already started on that, meeting on it. So hopefully in the next few months, we'll have something more to present for the special events. But that alone is a pretty big task. So
Sure. And just obviously think about this in your budget request too, the money for special events.
yes, sir. And we are thinking about what kind of budget requests to ask for next fiscal year. Also anticipating sponsorships, but until we know for sure that we're going to get them, we would probably ask for additional monies for events next year and then hopefully not have to use all of them.
Perhaps our town attorney could help us to understand whether the town has liability on a piece of private property. Would it not be up to Greg Stafford and the SoCo ownership to take a liability position if the entertainment was based there at SoCo?
If it were a town-sponsored activity, we normally require liability insurance to cover a special event. And I don't know whether that's included in this or not.
So we have notified, I have notified the finance director about the event, and she's the one to contact the insurance company to let them know
No,
of the
they should,
event.
somebody else should provide, the town shouldn't have to provide its own insurance for somebody else's event.
Well, we already have the insurance. We just let them know whenever there's an event.
Whoever is putting on this activity needs to have the insurance. But yes, you would be liable if it's a town-sponsored event, even if it's on
only
private
a
property.
portion of it were sponsored, if the bands that were playing there were paid for by the town.
Well, it sounds like it's more than that. I mean, the town's going to be advertising this, promoting this as a part of its downtown project. So this is a town event, it sounds to me like. Is that not right?
Yes, sir. It's through the Downtown Advisory Board. They're the board that approved it, but we are partnering with the local organization. The committee, Sip and Stroll committee consisted of the promotions committees, a few people from that, a few people from Circle City Merchants, and then a few people from the public that were just interested in being a part of it. So it was a collaborative effort to put this event together.
But it's a public event.
So one of the things we'll do is we'll check on the liability insurance with the property.
Very good.
And assuming we confirm that in advance, then I move that we approve the funding request.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Bonitz, seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda under new business is the TARPO Transportation Update Presentation. And Morgan DeWitt will be leading us and introducing us to Carol Fuller.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. Carol Fuller is joining us tonight as the town of Pittsburgh's representative from TARPO, and she's here to provide us with some NCDOT updates and also give us a brief overview of the STIP process and how projects are prioritized, which will hopefully help answer some questions that have come up recently and provide us all with a better understanding of that process.
Thank you, Morgan. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you. I have too many screens on, so let me just take a second to see if I can't figure out how to, oh, there I am. Turn my video on. So yeah, my name is Carol Fuller and I'm a senior planner. And I am the director for TARPO, which is the Triangle Area Rural Planning Organization. And that represents the city of Pittsburgh. And Morgan asked me to provide a brief overview of the strategic transportation investments and how that process ends up creating the STIP, or the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. I'm really sorry. I'm going to try and keep the acronyms down to the lowest level I can, but transportation and planning are both very acronym heavy, and I tend to forget sometimes. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, what acronym, please feel free to interrupt me. I'm happy to explain in more detail as needed. Oops. So a brief history of STI. This was actually a transportation bill in 2013 that was adopted on June 26th, and it totally overhauled transportation funding. Or how roads get built in North Carolina. And it was adopted with overwhelming support on June 26th. And as part of this, we started in 2014, the first round, and we call them rounds because every 2 years, we typically start this process over again, where we bring in new projects and we reprioritize existing projects, some of the existing projects. So we call them rounds. And that first round, which was called 3.0 prioritization, started in 2014. And currently, we should be about at the 8th round, but the 6th round was cut short, and we actually didn't do a full round. What happened is where DOT has actually released a current draft STIP, which would be the 2024 to 2033 STIP. It's a 10-year document, and the proposal is for it to be adopted in May of this year, but it isn't the result of a full round of prioritization. What happened is in between, we had COVID, DOT had some funding issues, there were supply chain and cash flow issues. And so all of the projects that we had in the 2020 to 2029 STIP that hadn't been constructed were brought into this next STIP, well, most of them, until we ran out of funding. And so there are no new projects in the STIP that went through the STI process. There are a few very new projects, but they didn't go through the STI process. And so in the second revision to this new draft STIP, the 2024 to 2033, all but 6 projects in TARPO, and TARPO includes 4 counties, the parts of Orange County, most of Chatham County, including the city of Pittsburgh, all of Lee, and all of Moore. So, but within TARPO, all but 6 projects were taken back up that had been in the 2020 to 2029 STIP, were brought back into the 2024 to 2033 STIP. One of the exceptions, all but 6 projects, and one of the exceptions is our 5961 here in Pittsburgh, which is the NC 87 project. It will be reprioritized in the next round of prioritization. And actually, I just wanted to be clear that no matter what would have happened, even if we had finished P6, it would have been reprioritized in P6. And so it will be reprioritized in P7 because we have 2 different types of projects. If you're in the first 5 years of the STIP, that's considered the committed STIP, and we expect that those projects will go to construction normally. The second 5 years is considered the developmental STIP, and all of those projects get some work done on them, but they are reprioritized and they have to go through the process again. And so all of this to say that, as I said, again, it is a cycle. We like to do it every 2 years. And so as soon as this one's adopted, the 2024 to 2033 STIP, hopefully in May, we will start gearing up for the next prioritization cycle, which will be 7. And we will start submitting new projects in July of 2023. And the end result of that process, or P7, is a 2026 to 2035 STIP. It's always a 10-year document. And again, it has 2 halves. The committed window, which we may be changing the terminology, but it's the projects we expect to be constructed. And the second half is developmental, where they've scored reasonably well. We're trying to move them forward with engineering and design. And can I get the next slide, please? So, so a little bit of a history of the results of this process since 2013. In P3, which was adopted in 2015, the only project in the Pittsburgh area that was brought into the committed window. So the first 5 years, hopefully, and it was R5724, which is Hillsborough Street improvements. And I'm going to mispronounce this, I'm sorry, from Lannis Street to Powell Place Lane. And so that project was brought in P4, which was adopted in 2017. There were no new funded projects added in Pittsburgh, but R5724 remained funded. And then P5, which was adopted in 2019, and is the current adopted STIP, which is a 2020 to 2029. There were several projects that were added. There's R5930, which is the Chatham Parkway north of US 64 bypass, which was also funded in the first 5 years, so it's considered committed. R5963, Chatham Parkway South, is also in the committed window, and then R5961 was funded. So this project, the NC 87 project, was funded in prioritization 5, and it was, again, in the non-committed window. It would have been reprioritized in the next round if we had completed it. And R5724 remains funded. In P6, as I talked about a little bit, there were no new projects were considered anywhere in the state through the STI process. Obviously, you were probably aware that there is new projects that will end up being constructed, mainly, VinFast and Wolfspeed, but the VinFast funds came directly from the legislature. They didn't come through this process that we are committed to doing. It came directly from the legislature, and the money that Wolfspeed did, which is capped at like $10 million. Again, that's more of a legislative decision that didn't come through STI. And no new projects other than that were considered anywhere in the state. And again, those 3 projects were funded, and obviously, as you're probably well aware, R5961 funding was removed, but it will be added and compete again in P7 and could be added back. So no project gets necessarily lost unless that's the will of the town and DOT. They can always come back and recompete again. Actually, I didn't say this about myself, but while I'm new to TARPO, I've been doing the RPO, another RPO in Foothills, and I've been an RPO director for 10 years. So I've been part of this since the new law passed. And we have resubmitted projects year after year, or cycle after cycle. And just because we're hoping that they will get picked up. Some of them there are multiple segments in the same road that we're trying to 4-lane as an example. And we keep resubmitting those because we'd like them to see if they eventually will compete better. Also, we improve the STI process every time. There's a work group, which I also sit on, that tries to improve the process every time to make it more transparent, better data, all of those things. It's actually part of the STI law that the process be continually improved. So this is the history, and now I'm going to briefly talk about the process. So if I can get the next slide. So what is this process that I keep talking about? Well, this is like the 100,000-foot overview. There is several steps to this process, not all of which TARPO or the city is involved with. But I'm going to talk a little bit about each of the steps. So as I mentioned before, in July of this year, we're going to do new project submissions. This is the opportunity for new projects or previous projects that didn't get funded, didn't get picked up, to be resubmitted or submitted if they're new into this, what we call the spot process. And the spot process, which is out of the STI law, is a data-driven process where there is a group at DOT that looks at congestion and looks at safety and looks at access and connectivity, that look at several different data points to come up with a spot score or a data score for each project that's submitted. And that process, so we submit the projects into a product called Spot Online, and then the Spot Office. Not only do we have the same name for different things, but we keep reusing the same name over and over. And for that, I'm sorry. But the Spot Office actually scores the project, and then the spring of 24 will provide those scores to us. So that's one part of this prioritization. The other part is local input, and that matters to me and to you because that is where TARPO and the city of Pittsburgh have another opportunity to influence the process. First being with what projects they submit. The local input, it doesn't matter, it's statewide. Actually, we have no local statewide projects, which are not all of them. I have more details in the next slide. But it does matter at the regional and division level. So there's 3 tiers. And that local input is from, well, there's a methodology that Matt developed before me that I will probably modify some that helps to develop that. But in the end, it really is up to the TAC board, the Transportation Advisory Committee of my board, to make those final determinations. Yes, we score them, we provide local input, but the board gets to make the final determinations. And so we take that data-driven score, the spot score, plus the local input points, and that becomes the final score. And one other thing I want to say about the local input points, at the regional level, it is only 30 points out of 100, and that's split between TARPO and the division, and you are in Division 8. And at the division level, which is the lowest level, where all of the projects compete, basically, the local input points represent 50% of the score. And again, it's split 25% to TARPO and 25% to the Division 8. Once we have a score, then the STIP office, which develops the statewide transportation improvement program, uses that score and other factors like design, engineering, federal requirements around financial constraints to create a STIP document. And to create the first 5 years and the second 5 years, there's financial constraints for the whole document that Federal Highways requires, and there's other constraints that go in, including environmental stuff as well. So that's an overview. And again, the blue items in this slide are the places where TARPO and its members have the ability to influence the process. So if we could advance to the next slide, please. So I mentioned that there were 3 levels or 3 tiers, as we call them, statewide. So how the legislature and the law define this is that statewide, it's 40% of the funding of the 10-year document. And for TARPO, rail, freight rail, not passenger, freight rail, and certain highways qualify. And that would be interstates, of which we don't have any, and some, but not all, US routes. So US 15501, US 64, US 1, and US 421 are examples. There are probably a few others that I didn't capture. It's completely data-driven at this level, using the spot score alone. There is no local input. So there is also no geographic equity, meaning that it's not spread across the state in any way. So one of the rounds, I want to say P3, Mecklenburg County and Wake County captured, I want to say, just over 50% of the total funding at the statewide level. And it was largely on interstates, but also on US routes. The middle tier is called regional. It's 30% of the funding. It's actually 2 paired divisions, and for us, it's 7 and 8. Again, it's only certain highways that qualify, everything that's above. So all of the US routes that are already mentioned, and then all of the US routes and all of the NC routes comprise this regional tier. And 70% of the score is the spot quantitative score, and 30% is local input. Again, it's split between TARPO and Division 7 and 8. And finally, at the lowest tier, which is the division tier, it's again 30% of the funding. And for TARPO, pretty much for the whole state, it's all state maintained roads, public transit, rail, bike, and ped. And a couple other places in the state, it also includes ferry. All of the modes, and did I leave off aviation? I left off aviation, I apologize. It also includes aviation. So and everything that was above, also what we call cascades down. So everything could receive funding at the division tier. We tend to like to favor smaller projects because the pot of money is smaller, and there's so many projects, but anything could be funded here. And again, if 50% is the spot score, which is quantitative, and 50% is the local input. Again, split between TARPO and Divisions 8, 50-50, or 25-25, excuse me. So that's the prioritization process. Could you go to the next slide? Okay, and this is just a schedule. As I mentioned before, in each round, before each round starts, there is a work group that works to improve the process. In that round, or in that work group now, and we meet until May of this year, and then that ends, which you can see is the first line, and then the first red circle is when Spot Online goes live, and we submit new projects. And then the next 2 lines in May to July 2024, we assign local input points, and then in September through November, we support division local input points, and the May through July was the regional level. And at each point, we're going to know all the statewide projects before we put local input points on the regional projects. We're going to know all the regional projects that got funded before we put local input points on the division needs projects. And then at the end, in February of 2025, a new draft STIP will come out, and it will be hopefully approved in August 2025, and that will carry us through to the next round. And this will go on. There will be a prioritization 8 and onwards. So that's the schedule. I think I have a couple more slides, but that's the overview. So here's a couple of things. As I mentioned already, expect to hear more from TARPO over the next several months regarding the process for submitting projects. We've always established a subcommittee to establish the rules for this process, and we'll likely reach out to all of you for any new projects or projects you want to resubmit, including NC 87 in the spring or early summer. And then based on our current DOT schedule, TARPO will likely vote at its August meeting on the projects to submit for consideration and scoring. And even though I've sort of focused on highway here, this does include all other modes. So if there's aviation projects or bike and ped projects that you'd like to have considered, you can bring those as well, or rail. Though usually rail comes from the actual operators. But if there is something that you're working on with them, please feel free to bring that forward as well. So, and I don't know if I have any more slides. Yes, okay. I don't know. I just want, Morgan let me know you guys were interested in knowing whether providing money, funds would help move the process along. It does, but it is somewhat limited. There is one within highways, there's 9 criteria the legislature lets us use, and one of them is benefit cost. And so as part of the benefit cost formula, if you add funding, you reduce the project cost to NCDOT, so that improves your score. And if you tell us at the beginning, before project submittal, that you're planning to do that, how much you're planning to provide, that will affect that part of the score. And the second part of the score, which is the other funds divided by the total project cost. If you aren't able to tell me until after the project is submitted, but before we put points on, you will still get partial credit here, but it will only be the second half. The first half is decided by the spot office, and once that score comes out in this late spring of 24, it can't be changed. So it can improve benefit costs. I will also tell you that that second half could bring your score to 100, but you can't get more than 100. In the STI law as well, there are no, every criteria has to be scored from 0 to 100. There are no bonus points and no unlimited ways to get around that. So it's actually in the law itself. And with that, I think I have one other slide, but I can take questions now, or we can do the last slide if that's okay. Oh, yes. Morgan also asked me to just say some other things that are going on in TARPO. You are likely aware, I hope, that we are planning to redo the Chatham County CTP, and Pittsburgh is going to be part of that. So we're going to do a CTP that covers the entire county, and TPD has begun work updating the model. They're including projections for VinFast and Wolf Speed, and that model is projected for completion in the fall of 2023. We will form a steering committee and then use that model to establish deficiencies, highway deficiencies, and then make recommendations after that as well. So that's going to be ongoing. I know it's sort of been ongoing even before I got here, because there were some issues with the Chatham County CTP. Before there were some map issues. So we're just going to roll the Pittsburgh's proposed update into the Chatham County and move all of that forward as quickly as we can. The other thing I will note, and I know Morgan's on this, is we have several grant opportunities, carbon reduction that came out of the IIJA law, CMAQ, which has been around for many years, as well as a couple of others. And if you have questions about those, I'm happy to take them, but those grant opportunities are open right now. And like I said, I know Morgan's working on projects for both of them. So I said a lot. So if you have questions, please feel free.
Well, that was super helpful. Thank you. I think we're not eligible for CMAQ in the town. Can you confirm that?
No, you are eligible for CMAQ funds. You've gotten them before.
The non-attainment / maintenance areas, I understood, don't extend into town limits.
But the way they do it at DOT, it's the 4 northeastern townships, and I believe that includes Pittsburgh. I know that.
All right.
Morgan's working on a sidewalk project right now, so
I won't question it further.
That's fine. If you're right, then I could be wrong, but I have, I'm, as I said, I'm a little bit new to TARPO and I didn't do CMAC before, but that is where we're at this point. So.
In my day job at the Clean Energy Technology Center, we administer a small pool of CMAQ funds called CFAT, Clean Fuels Advanced Transportation Program. And we had been instructed that those projects would not be eligible. So maybe I need to revisit that, but.
I actually, it took me a while because I knew that Matt told me that Pittsburgh was eligible, and I know that I'm actually, somebody asked me, Chatham County asked me, what the eligible regions were in the county, and it took me a while to track it down, but I found a map that showed the 4 northeastern townships, and that was what was eligible, and I confirmed it with Heather at DOT. So.
And we have current CMAQ funding, so the sidewalk this year.
Yes, I do have one question. Thank you for that general overview very much. And in reference to one of the projects which indicate it will remain funded or remains funded, which is R5724. Now, how does that work? Does it continue just to remain on that list, or can it be bumped off and you lose funding?
I'd like to say that it would continue forever until it's constructed, but DOT, there's been some changes. But at this point in time, nobody has said anything about any bumping any of these projects. It could happen the way that we've been told that it could happen when we would have some ability to try to affect that. It was a previous committee called the sticker committee, which would, if it got very expensive or if the scope changed, they might ask for it to be removed. But again, that's going to be a process. And I haven't heard that committee has even met recently because of the ongoing issues where it's not anybody's fault, but obviously supplies or costs are rising. And so if you have a uniform 20% rise in costs, it's not really any particular project's fault. So as far as I'm aware, no, they would let me know if that project was going to be removed, and I don't anticipate that at this time.
And if that is the case, of course, the local government would possibly be notified and be able to weigh in on that decision or be able to indicate why there should be points that would still be valid in reference to that project.
Correct. Yes. You do have a member on the TAC, and yes, we would be happy to make sure to bring that back to the city if we do receive notification that project may fall out of the STIP. But at this point in time, that has not been indicated to me. It's been around long enough at this point that I believe it's going to it should continue on and be constructed at some point.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Further questions for Carol Fuller?
Yes, Ms. Fuller, on the comprehensive transportation plan update, we've been trying to get that done in Pittsburgh. Our most recent one is 2011. It hasn't happened yet, obviously. So we entered into that agreement to, work with Chatham County on a regional plan, which I think is a great idea. My concern with this project is that CTP update is now scheduled to be done in the fall of 2023, and projects for this next round need to be submitted in August. So my concern is that we've been asking for that CTP update for years now, and we don't have it. And then now the results of that study are not going to be complete in time to submit for this next round of funding, it seems like.
You are correct. I will say that it is not a requirement that a project that you would like that's new be in a CTP. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't love to know about it soon, because what I can do is, if you are interested in a project, is I can ask for an express design. And so if you have some ideas of projects that maybe came out of your CTP but didn't get finalized because you didn't update it, please feel free to reach out and bring those to my attention. And like I said, I can bring them to the department and they will do an express design because they've been doing express designs through this whole process, trying to get caught up because it gives them better cost estimates. So even though it won't be out of the CTP, I can get some design work completed, and then we can bring it back with the cost estimates and talk about it. Does that
Okay.
help you?
Yeah, that's great. That's great to know. And I guess too, is it possible to accelerate the CTP update at all? Because I mean, I think that'd be the better case scenario for everyone, to do the normal process than to kind of cherry pick some for pre-work ahead of that, since it's off by a few months.
Well, I will say that I don't know if that can be done. Well, I know DOT has hired a consultant to do those model updates, and he's doing 2 models, one here and one somewhere else in DOT's region. So I'm not sure what the schedule is, but I am talking to TPD tomorrow, and I can see if we can accelerate it. But even if I accelerate it, it's not likely to be ready for July or September. Because it'll still be a process after the model is finished to develop the deficiencies and then the recommendations. I mean, one thing I could offer is, obviously you've done work, and I don't know how far along it was, but we could take a look at the recommendations they may have already developed and see if they would continue to fit what you need. But I can't make any promises that it would be accelerated any faster than what you're currently telling me.
Okay, sure. And we don't want to do it a disservice by accelerating it, certainly, but maybe during that process, we identify some things, to get into this process that would be good. And then I guess kind of a follow-on question to that. So TARPO is going to vote in August 2023 for which projects to include. Those successful projects would be approved in the final step in August 2025. When would those projects start? So like projects we identify in 2023, when would they start construction?
At best, you have 2 years in the committed STIP that would be available the next round. So you have a lot of projects and competing for that committed window. So the best shot would actually be that they would end up in the developmental. So the second 5 years or 6 years, whatever we decide at that time, and would end up coming back in prioritization 8. And that would be the more likely place where they'd be committed and a schedule will be set for construction. The DOT doesn't take anything quickly. Unfortunately.
That's correct. That's all I'll say. But so I guess what you're saying is like this number 7 is really a feeder for number 8 because they're backed up essentially.
Yeah, well, they create a 10-year document, yes, and so they're always working through the document, but we redo this every 2 years. So yes, what we're hoping to do eventually is to create a feeder document that feeds into the construction, and so there'd be more assurance that once a project was picked up by the STIP that it would be constructed. And potentially a little bit faster, but it's never going to be terribly quick. It's a long process with a lot of federal requirements. And so it also depends on how far you are along the design, because that takes several years in some cases to get through.
Okay, thank you. This is very helpful to understand this process and how it takes so long. I don't understand that.
And like
why it takes so long.
Right. And I wanted to just say this because I forgot to mention it when I was talking, that the legislature wanted it to be more transparent how we develop a STIP, more data driven, and less, less, I don't want to say smoky room, but less, in the shadows of how roads get from beginning to end. And so it is transparent, I'm not sure if it's easy to understand, but I'm happy to come back and explain or anything that you like in greater detail. But everything that we do as TARPO will be available on my website. So when I develop the methodology and it's approved, when I do the draft local input points, and then when we do the final input points, it's all out. It will all be out there on the website, and you guys are always welcome to participate in those discussions and to come to TARPO if you're interested and listen in when we do that. So.
Farrell,
Yeah.
just my amazing watch up being the interim manager and listening to the update to the county transportation plan mentioned bid fast and look speed. You know, adjacent to Top Road, we're gonna have 22,000 houses with 22 million square feet of office. It seems to me, particularly if you think about this, maybe a 10-year document, but it seems to me that needs to be modeled as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know I didn't say that, but as part of the Pro CTP, we're already doing that modeling. So that will be rolled up along with the new stuff from FinFast and Wolfspeed. So they are aware of Chatham Park and all of the existing or all of the proposals. I know Morgan had been working pretty closely with my DOT contacts at TPD, but I can verify that, but I'm pretty positive that we were already working with the projections for Chatham Park.
Okay, that's super critical to us.
Thank you very much.
And I have some questions as well. It sounds like you've already kind of addressed it in response to Hazen's question, but I was hearing from you that the spot analysis being data driven sounds to me like that is a retrospective process. Is that right?
Unfortunately, it is mainly a retrospective process. We are well aware as the work group, not necessarily as TARPO, that it is, and we've been trying to make it more forward facing, but it is, there are limitations, of course, on the data that we have. And much of that data is retrospective.
Yeah.
So for example, congestion, we actually use AADP and volume, and we are interested in using something more similar to streetlight, which would actually show us congestion, or live congestion, not what we're projecting as just the % of capacity. So yes, we are aware. I will tell you on the safety, we've come a ways this P3. We do consider what we are known as safety benefit factors. So if you do this to the road, add guardrails, add lanes, put on paved shoulders, you can expect that it's going to reduce crashes this much. We include that in the data score. So yes, it is mostly retrospective, but we do try and look at the future when we can. I will say it's only at statewide. Another thing we do looking to the future is there is a modeling program called TREDIS, and it does provide some economic data like jobs and some stuff that is used. But again, that's only used at the statewide tier. So for only a limited number of roads. But yeah, the work group is aware that we're mainly looking at the past.
Okay. And so for future looking forward looking aspects to be considered during the spot analysis, is that dependent on the completion of the CTP, the Chatham CTP?
No, the data that we use in the spot is not dependent on the CTP.
So is there a way, maybe it's not just the spot analysis that needs to consider these future aspects, but how, in what other ways can, aside from the CTP, can we have the imminent growth of our region considered?
I mean, it will be modeled as part of the CTP. If you do an express design, they do model a future year. Unfortunately, I'm not remembering off the top of my head whether that's 10 or 25. But they do, look at future volume. So we do try to do some of that modeling, but it's not outside of the CTP and express designs. I'm not sure I understand what you're looking for.
Okay, well, I'm curious about 5961, the Highway 87 project, and how we can get it back into consideration. And it just seems to me that the growth we're expecting is going to cause traffic on the west side as well as the east side, and especially because we're growing to the south, and people heading from the Siler City area or the center of the county to the southern part of the town and our outskirts are going to have to go through that road. So is it possible that we could divide that into two projects, into 5961A and 5961B?
Yes, and we could actually test that and see how they would score. I am gonna ask because I think Matt told me that 5961 is not a widening project, right? It's just modernization. You're improving the lanes and you're adding paved shoulder, or are you actually adding additional lanes?
I don't know the details of the project.
Okay. Because if it's more a modernization, then we really don't consider at the current time, volume is not considered very high. It's a small portion of the data. We actually consider safety, and whether it meets current standards, not necessarily whether it is, it's congested.
Okay.
So,
And I had earlier asked if that project did include complete streets treatment.
I don't know based off of what I have here. I'm sorry, Matt developed the list of history, but I'm happy to get back to you and let you know whether that included complete streets elements. It could include complete streets elements, and we could definitely add those if they weren't in there. Further, and make that modification if that is something that the town would like to look at.
And it almost sounds like with the abundance of funding that the federal government is directing into these alternative modes of transportation, walking and bike paths and multi-use paths, I'm wondering if perhaps adding that onto 5961 might not help us find the funds to build it and thus accelerate it.
Unfortunately, the legislature decided when they passed this law that they would not provide, well, I shouldn't say that. A complete streets project doesn't necessarily capture federal funds. It could, but it may not capture any federal additional federal funds, depending on where it is. And if you were to try and go after the bike and ped as a standalone project, the state is not allowed to put in any state match for any bike and ped project. So that would be on the local government to fund that separately, at least the match, which is 20%. On the complete streets elements, we're currently operating that DOT needs to provide at least some complete streets elements, but it depends on what's in your plans and also what they believe is necessary. So by and large, they've seen it as adding costs, not being able to pull additional funding down. And just as sort of a stat that I have in my head that I feel sharing, North Carolina, because it maintains almost around 80,000 miles of road as a state, federal funding typically only accounts for about 25% of their budget. In other states, it's substantially more, but North Carolina funds its road 75% of its roads out of state funds. So it's not.
Okay. Well, I was also curious to try to learn how much additional funds are needed from the town in order to ensure that the 5961 project proceeds at any time.
I don't know that I have an answer for that. I'm happy to reach out to Patrick Norman and talk about that and look at the spot score, but and see if that would make a change. But again, and that one criteria where it counts, you can't get better than 100% in that one criteria. And it is typically one of 5. And I believe it's 25% of the score, but it also matters congestion, or if it's modernization, other criteria. But even if we do it under the normal criteria, benefit cost is no more than 25% of the data-driven score. So it would also be based on freight, safety, and congestion.
Okay. I think I'll hold the rest of my questions for a private conversation with you, Ms. Fuller. Thank you so much for your time and effort.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. I believe we're now into there are no matters of miscellaneous on the agenda, but we are anticipating a closed session. Is there a motion for the board to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-31811A3?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Shipp,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. And we will go into closed session with the purpose of that general statute.
We're going to go to a different room.
Madam Clerk. So the board has emerged from closed session. And are there any closing comments the board has needs to attend to before we adjourn for the evening? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Pamela Baldwin, seconded by Commissioner Bonitz. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries